Bedros, good to see you. It's been like 5 minutes since we saw each other in the gym.
We ran into each other in the gym, and here you are again. It was so cool to see you in the gym because normally I get to see people when I meet you down here on Zoom or wherever. So I was able to put a face with a name.
Yeah.
And that helps. I get a little social anxiety, so that always helps when I can put a face with a name.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I thought it was so cool. I mean, we had just met for like that 5 minutes, and it just was a fluke that we were in the gym together. I was on the treadmill and I was running and I was listening to another podcast that you were on, just, kind of refreshing, doing some due diligence. And I look up and I'm like, you kind of do one of those things where you're listening to the podcast and you're like, it's just like for a second.
Yeah.
But when I came up to you and I introduced myself, you were so kind. And the one thing you said was, before we parted ways was, thank you so much for flying out here. And I was like, man, it's just really kind.
Man, it doesn't, it's been 2 decades now I've been an entrepreneur, and probably about a decade since I've been like in the public eye as through social media and writing my book. Not a day goes by that I'm not grateful. I mean, the fact that you're like, I'm going to get on an airplane, fly out here and talk to this guy, like, how can I not be grateful for that? Like, wow. Yeah. Thank you. Again.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you back. What I really like to do is I like to start out with just some fun questions.
Sure.
And just what do you like to do outside of work and family? Like, what are a few things that just bring you joy?
So I am an introvert by nature. So a lot of the things I do are either with a very small group of people or with just this person, me. So, for example, every night my son and I will play ping pong. I enjoy that. It brings me so much joy to be competitive against my son. We'll go work out in the gym together as a family every night. And ironically, while you saw me in a public gym today, my actual private gym was being used this morning. Tonight, my family and I will be at my private gym working out together, and it's so much fun. We do this thing called shred burn, where we'll do 2 exercises in the gym, and then we'll all run out the front door and run around the building, and that's like 0.2 of a mile, and we'll do that 5 times, and there's a mile. But it's the thing that brings me happiness, because I'm with my babies. Well, now my son's 16 and Chloe's 13. I'm with my babies and my wife, and we're connecting, and we're kind of racing each other. So there's competitiveness, there's family bonding, there's grunting together in the gym, there's then the competitive ping pong with me and my son when we get home. I also love to surf, shoot guns. In fact, tomorrow I'm going gun shooting with my 2 nephews. They're in their 20s and 30s. But again, very small group, surfing, usually solo, hiking. Yeah, and I think part of that is because my life I'm forced to be an extrovert, right?
Right.
Whether I'm speaking from stage or to my franchisees or on social media. And so anytime I can go back into my little shell to recharge and do fun stuff, I do. And I just love lifting weights. It's part therapy and part a passion.
Yeah. So tell me about working out with the family. Are they always like, hey, let's go? Or are they like, maybe not tonight?
Yeah, the second part. So my wife and I are always like, hey, let's go, right? And then Andrew, now that he's 16, and I'm convinced there's a girl who he kind of says there is, but they're not a thing yet, whatever. But obviously he's working out to build the muscles to get her attention, because that's what boys do. And so he's more gung-ho towards going to the gym these days versus he was, let's say, last year or the year before. Chloe, she'll go and she'll just do like cartwheels and somersaults on the turf. We have this, the turf in the gym, and she'll do that. So she won't necessarily do a workout or whatever. But she asked me the other day, man, she's like, hey, Dad, can we do a leg workout together? My mom and dad both have big legs. Communist legs is what I call them. That Eastern Bloc country, right? They've always been great deadlifters and squatters, that whole part of the world. And so I've always had strong legs. And now that my daughter's 13, going on 14, she's like, hey, Dad, can we train legs together? I'm like, baby, that's a 2-hour thing on a Sunday. It's like a ritual. It's a whole thing. Like, we're going to go bananas. She's like, let's do it. And so I'm going to put my daughter through a nice leg workout. Not this Sunday, but the Sunday after when I get back from this trip I've got coming up. But it's neat to be able to connect with them and work out. Sometimes they're fully into it once they're there. Other times it's like pulling teeth to get them there and to get them to work out, because they're kids, and sometimes their mood can change with the blow of the wind.
Right. Yeah.
But I do love that they're connected to me and my wife, and they will always respect us and come. And they go, oh, well, I'm not going to work out. I'm going to sit in the lobby and just like kind of do my thing on my iPhone. Before I know it, they kind of meander into the gym.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think when you set the example like that, you know, and you create that environment to where it's more of a fun. I mean, it's competitive, right? And it's hard, but it's also fun. Yeah. It's bonding. Yeah. Like, you know, they gravitate to that.
These days, we've got my son driving us. So he's got his learner's permit. So he'll drive us the 5 miles from home to the gym. And so he enjoys that. So anytime I can get, because I know for a fact that the earlier I can instill these habits in them, it'll be a lifetime thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm convinced that working out, fitness, is a gateway drug. It's therapy. It is endorphins. It is dopamines. It is health. It is immune system. It is all of that. And it's helped me solve a lot of problems before I ever had the courage to go see a therapist. And I want them to have that outlet. And my wife and I are on the same page about that. And so while I started working out in my 18, 19 years old, I want them to start working out early. So at 12 years old, I start taking them. And truth is, they are addicted. If like I go on a business trip and come back and they're like, hey, Dad, ready to go?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, man, I just landed, but yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. I love that, man. What's been one quick comment on your son. So as we were saying, I've got 4 boys. I have 15, almost 14, 8 and 5. And my 2 older ones in particular, you know, now that they have their eyes on girls, are like, Dad, like, what should I be eating? Should I have this or this? And then they always want to work out. Yeah. So like I work out with my 13-year-old throughout the week, and then on Saturday, every Saturday morning we work out together. And you're right, it's an incredible bonding time. And I swear a lot of it's because you're sweating together, you're in a little bit of pain together, spotting each other. But the endorphins, man, like you feel good, and it's just such a good bonding experience.
And that is how men connect. Like everything you just listed off is how you and your son must connect.
Yeah.
You know, the quote that is so misunderstood, where people think the actual quote is blood is thicker than water. It's the most misunderstood and taken out of context quote ever. It's actually the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, in that when men suffer together, grunt together, sweat together, work together, go to battle together. You look at men in the military, they've gone to battle, they come back, they are more connected with their battle buddies than they are with their own siblings. That is just by design, because it is a community of men, a tribe of men that protect that tribe of people. And so they can try and take it out of us as much as they want, but when you and your son are in the gym grunting together, sweating together, competing, you know, who's going to lift more, and then you spot each other, like in the most dangerous, like, I got you, son, that bar's not going to fall on your face, and vice versa, I got you, Dad. Like there's a little magical chemistry that takes place that words cannot bring to fruition. And I think it's a very necessary thing. And dads who don't do it are missing out.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, there's something about this spotting. It's like, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you in more ways than one.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Without ever even saying those words, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's such symbolism behind it.
Yeah.
I want to ask, as far as what's something funny that's happened to you in your journey of fatherhood that maybe you didn't expect, and you look back on it, you're like, man, that was hilarious.
Well, so there's a couple things that come to mind. One, when Andrew was just like, I had always wanted a little boy. I mean, I love Chloe to death too, right? I'm so grateful that I got my daughter, but I think every man wants a little boy, like a little legacy. And I've always wanted a little boy. So as soon as Andrew's born, like within like the first, 5-6 months that he's like starting to now play, he was just got done breastfeeding. I took him from my wife and burped him. And then I laid down on the ground and I picked him up and I'm like, hey, buddy. And he just projectile vomited right into my face, into my mouth. Now, everything about your instinct says, like, throw this thing away, right? Oh my God, so I can wipe my face. But I realized I'm holding somebody so precious, something so tiny. And so I just took it like a man. and so afterwards I was like, what the hell am I thinking? The other thing that comes to mind that was just so funny is my son and I, after we work out as a family, then we come home, and he and I will play a round or two of ping pong, and we'll jump in the hot tub. When we get home, the hot tub's on, warming up, and so we'll jump in the hot tub together. And I realized that, again, I just think back to the caveman days, right? Like the cavemen together, they worked to bring wood to the cave and water to the cave and push a big boulder in front of the cave to protect, their little hovel that they're living in, and they help each other out. And so I imagine at some point they probably go into a hot spring together and just like grunt like about the hunt of the saber-toothed tiger and how heavy that boulder was and how much work it took to bring that wood to the cave. And so we'll talk in the car on the way to the gym, like, hey, son, how was school? Good. Okay. Hey, Dad, how was work? Good. And that's it. But in the hot tub, all of a sudden, he just starts like, blah, like talking about everything, his friends, what he did in sports, and the girls, and da-da, and then I start. And I'm like, you know what? I bet you there's something primal about this, like just the father and son, or just men. And I realize it is primal because when Ray, he's a Navy SEAL who works for me in the project, he's one of my project instructors in square, he'll come into town, he stays at our guest house when we can sneak away from the project for like 30 minutes or so to hit the hot tub together. Again, we just start connecting at a different level. When we're working out together, we start connecting. And I'm always taken aback of how I could have told him about my day in the car. He could have told me about his day in the car. But somehow, I just crack up. It works so well in the hot tub where he's just relaxing and I'm relaxing. And we're just like, blah, vomiting at the mouth, talking to each other about how our days went.
Well, sometimes if you change the environment, right, the conversation changes.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get into, obviously, your childhood and how you grew up. A couple things I don't know is, what was the relationship with your parents like, in particular, maybe even your father?
Dude, I'm still unpacking that. And I say that because there's so much gratitude. I'm supposed to be a taxi driver. I'm supposed to be in Armenia, in a communist country, which, by the way, I realized since 1994, it's a democracy, but it's still communist. I went back about 12 years ago. It's still communist in terms of how they think, operate, and run the country. I'm supposed to be either a cab driver or a mechanic. My dad, who was a member of the Communist Party, decided that we're going to escape when I was 6 years old and brought us to the United States. We lived as good as a life that you could live in a communist country, especially when you're a member of the party, and only 18% of the population at the time was a member of the Communist Party, so we lived better than most. Yet he knew that there was this freedom, this democracy, this opportunity that the U.S. afforded its citizens that Armenia, under Soviet rule, didn't. So he risked his life especially to bring us here. So how can you not be grateful, all right? But I was never put on restriction when I did something bad because he would just beat the shit out of me. And I remember telling my friends, want to go knock on the door, hey, do you want to play a G.I. Joe, skateboard, something? We lived in apartment complexes and like Section 8 housing when we first came, so it was government-assisted housing. And so, like, hey, do you want to play? And like, no, I can't come out and play for a week. I'm on restriction. I was like, what's restriction? And well, I got in trouble. I came in late and, after the sun went down, and so I can't come out. I'm like, your dad can't just slap you around a bit and come out and play like my dad? Right? Like, your dad hits you? I'm like, yours does it?
Yeah.
And so, there's the unpacking of that. He's 87 years old now, and I love him to pieces, but my upbringing was rough and tumble. I didn't know how to open doors and say please and thank you. I was raised feral. If there was a word that would describe it, I was raised feral. Like, hey, welcome to America, free country. You can be anything you want to be as long as you help people. He did tell me that, like, just help the people in the country and the country will help you. And I get it, man. I hear him and my mom argue that they run out of money before they run out of month. And he delivered newspapers in the middle of the night, pumped gasoline at an Arco station, worked at a pizzeria. Like, God bless him, man. He had multiple jobs, and we're running out of money before we run out of month. And there I am shoplifting. I stole a little toy or something, and so that embarrassed him, and he just beat the shit out of me in the parking lot of the school, or of the shopping center. And a week later in school, Salk School in Anaheim. The teacher probably it's like a mandatory thing. Hey kids, if your parents hit you or whatever, they can't do that. So if that happens, you can let us know. Bro, I'm at this point like 9 years old. So I'm like,
Right.
Yes, that happened.
Yeah.
Shit, man, did I take a beating after that? Then I had to deny it when the parents came, when my mom and dad came, along with my brother to translate. He's older than me. And it was like, do you beat him? Like, they're like, no. The teacher looks at me, I'm like, nope, because by this point, they've already talked to me.
Right.
Man, but the relationship was, he didn't play football with me. We didn't go throwing the ball around. Like it was a very different relationship than you and I have with our sons and our kids. I'm grateful, but there's a little bit of hurt. There's a little bit of like, what the hell, dude? But then I again realized I'm supposed to be a mechanic in Armenia or a cab driver. And look at the fucking life I got now. Like, how can I not be grateful? But there's a chip on my shoulder, and I'm trying to unpack that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I come from very similar backgrounds as it relates to that, and it's awesome and refreshing that you view it that way. I don't know if you ever did this. I did this, but for probably in my late 20s and into my early 30s, I was really more in that victim camp. Like, look what happened. Like, it's almost like you're out there looking for proof for it, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly think at this point that our parents, no matter what happened, they probably did the best they could with what they had.
Bingo.
Yeah. And then not only that, but, you really find out when you become a father, it's like, wow, they were human. You don't really view them as that when you're younger, but they're truly human and they're trying to deal with their own stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I can just imagine, could you, I described to my son and daughter when they're like, what was it like, Dad, when you guys came? I'm like, I can't even say like, let's go to Japan, because you could just bust out your iPhone and translate into Google and then it'll translate in Japanese. So I can't even say let's go to Japan. Like, we'd have to go to Mars, son. Like, we'd have to go to Mars for you to see how different it is. And then I'd have to freak out knowing that I don't have enough Martian money and I don't have the Martian culture, and the Martians hate me and tell me to go back to my own planet, because that's what happened. Go back to your own effing country. Like, I'd hear people yelling at my dad, man, you're taking all of our American jobs. I remember thinking, like, you want to deliver newspapers at 2 a.m? You want to bust tables at a pizzeria? I don't know. You don't want to pump gas at Arco and get, he would get robbed at gunpoint. But imagine how much rage and anger that built in him when you're running out of money, you're being yelled at, and then your kid's like shoplifting or whatever. So I do realize in hindsight that there is this, like, he did the best he could with what he had, as you said. But to even try and explain to my kids, we'd have to go to Mars today. We'd have to leave the planet. That's how different my dad's experience was when he left Armenia and brought us here.
Yeah. I definitely understand that. I honestly feel like guys, like men like you and I, you come from these tougher backgrounds, and then we decide, you know what, I'm gonna do this different. I don't know exactly what it's gonna look like, but I'm gonna do it different. You've developed obviously a lot of different businesses. You've developed a platform now for men, and also for men with boys, right? Your Squire program. Yeah. But I'm really, really curious, as you've raised Andrew in particular, what has been most meaningful for you as a father to teach him lessons along the way? But not only the life lessons, but you come across to me as a man and a father who, to connect with your son is super important. Otherwise, you wouldn't put in that time every day with ping pong and working out and, the conversations you guys have. So what is most meaningful to you?
I think once I felt like he's got his own set of core values, and I felt they were the right core values because they aligned with mine. So I was like, God forbid I get hit by a car, I'm okay. Like Andrew's going to be fine and Chloe's going to be fine. But specifically with Andrew, since you asked, like, I remember thinking, like, I didn't have a set of core values. And so my friends would talk me into carjackings and home invasion robberies. And I justified the home invasion robberies by, I'm not going to go in the home, I'm going to be the getaway car driver. It was still a home invasion robbery.
Right.
I was part of that. My son, I don't know if you know this, but they call those the vape pens, they call them puff sticks.
Oh, I didn't
the
know
nicotine
that.
ones. He's like, Dad, you know what a puff stick is? I'm like, no, son, I don't. He's like, how do you not know what a puff stick is? I'm like, I don't. And he goes, it's the vape pen. I'm like, okay, yes, I do. He goes, all the kids at school, they smoke it. It's got nicotine in it. I'm like, okay, got it. He goes, so I started a movement. He started a movement at school, man, to get these kids off of this because his core values are like, he won't drink. I was like, son, when he was small, you want a sip of coffee? He tasted it once, like, oh, I don't like it. Why do you drink it? It doesn't taste good. Because truly, coffee doesn't taste good. Like, it's got caffeine. It gives me a little edge in the morning and helps me wake up. Because of that, he's like, I don't need it. Like, his core values are, I don't need any outside influence to, like, get charged up and excited about life.
That's awesome.
He is 16 now, and Chloe will go and make a frappa mochaccino for herself and me and Mom, and Andrew's like, Chloe, what are you doing, right? He's got very, like black and white core values. And so nicotine, obviously, that his friends rely on to take the edge off of life, as they tell him. He's like, no, dude, you don't need it. And then he decided now the movement is going to be also pornography because his friends were like getting dug into it. And he openly talks to him. He's like, Dad, during the COVID times, I found myself like looking at some porn sites and I was like, holy shit, what am I doing? And so I created a rule. He created rules for himself because I remember teaching him many years ago, son, I have rules for myself. Like, I'm a fat kid. I eat bagels and cream cheese, so I can't be in the house. If it's not in the house, then the abs will stay. If it's in the house, I will eat the entire bag of bagels and cream cheese. And so he created a rule for himself. And the reality is, like, we all think about that. Our kids have iPhones. They have these Androids that are connected to the interwebs. And then where are they going on that thing? What are they experiencing? What are they seeing? Turns out if you set some character and core values in place for them, that becomes almost the guidance mechanism of right or wrong. But I didn't have that. And so I could justify stealing that kid's Honda Accord, because when we chop it up into its parts, we can get, 4 or 5x the car's value from it. And we could do home invasion robbery of that house because 1, they're not home. 2, they probably have house insurance, so it'll cover everything. What's the problem? Like, my son will never have to justify wrong deeds because he's got character and core values. And those are the 2 things that I just feel like gave him his true north, and I love that about him. And now Chloe, I see that because she's 2 years younger, she has that, and I love seeing that develop in them because she'll go out with her friends, we'll drop her off at the outdoor mall here, and they'll take a group picture. She's athletic, but she dresses nice, like an athlete or whatever, but her jeans aren't riding low where you could see the hip bones, and there is no eighth grader cleavage, like, I don't want to say her friend's name, whatever her friend is, like her friend. And I'm like, Chloe, why is her cleavage showing? Oh, Dad, because the mom and dad, they argue, blah, blah, blah. And now she's starting to hurt herself at home. Like, oh my God. But core values and some level of character will literally forever be the operating system that they go off of. And I feel like, man, God forbid something happened to me on a flight to a speaking gig or wherever, I feel like they're good to go from this point forward. And that just gives me peace of mind.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I can really relate to that story. So my 13-year-old, like, you and I are the same age, and I don't remember drugs even being a thing until I was probably like a junior in high school. That's when I started like being aware that it was there. And now all of a sudden my 13-year-old is like, yeah, Dad, like so-and-so just got caught with weed. I'm like, wait, what? I was like, he's 13. He's like, yeah. And so it's a friend of his. And I was like, so what do you think of that? He's like, well, he's not my friend anymore. I was like, wow. I was like, so he's out? And this was a few months ago. He's like, yeah. He's like, he's out. I'm done. And come to find out, core values is a big deal in our house too. We talk about our core values and how we operate and how we make decisions and filter our decisions through core values. And my son, and not that he doesn't do anything wrong. He definitely makes mistakes. But the one thing that's really cool that I've noticed is that he leads his group of friends really well. So his friends will get into mischief. he had one friend that had a vape, and he took the vape and threw it in the woods. And I was like, dude, weren't you kind of like worried about it? He's like, no. He was like, you know, if he would have disagreed or whatever, he knows where I stand with that, and I don't have any tolerance for that. And I was like, man, that's awesome. I want to get to the how though. Like, obviously, you come across to me as a person who leads, like lead by example. Did you ever have a sit down conversation with Chloe and Andrew of like, hey, this is how you discover your core values, or this is how we understand what they are and then how we operate, or do you just show them?
You know, I got to give credit where credit is due on this one, so I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Ed Milet on this one. And Ed says that we learn more of the things that we learn are caught and not taught. And I believe that to be true. And I think what you and I have done differently, and probably many men listening to this, like, look, you know, I was molested when I was between the ages of 4 and 6. I was molested in Armenia many times by these two older boys. Now, historically or whatever, I'm supposed to grow up to either be a predator or, you know, a druggy drunk to avoid and ignore the pain that caused me, or a protector. And I leaned towards being a protector and being a better person. My father, I love him to pieces, like I said, but he was never involved. He's like, hey, welcome to America, like, make it happen. I wanted to be more involved, right? Like, some of us just lean towards, I'm going to do the opposite. We just, hey, parenting by doing the opposite, and it'll work. One of our project instructors, Matt Schneider, his mom has been married and divorced 8 times. He doesn't remember his biological dad. She's been married and divorced 8 times. He didn't know that was a big deal until one of his friends came to his room and was like, hey, Matt, why do all the different trophies have different last names on it? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, mine all have one last name. It's like, what? Right? And so you can imagine the trauma this dude had. But going back to the question of living and operating the opposite of how I was raised, and I think being so militant about it, and I probably was a little too extreme about it at times. I've rarely had to sit Andrew and Chloe down and be like, this is how you should live your life, or this is why we live the life the way we live. I can tell you that the 2 biggest factors were the woman that I chose to marry, my wife, Diana. We organically share the same core values, and then we lived it. Our kids caught it, and I don't think they even thought twice that there might be any other set of core values. Now, truth be told, in high school, I was never popular. I was a foreigner kid in elementary school, junior high, high school, so I would have never started a movement of like getting my friends to quit smoking and being dependent on chemicals and hey, stop the pornography, etc. I just didn't have the confidence for that. But as I gained confidence and was able to then demonstrate confidence to my kids, my kids now have confidence. So core value and confidence, learned, seen, experienced, they just run with it. I try, like, there's probably maybe 2 to 3 times I can remember sitting with them and saying right from wrong, or specific core values that we should discuss, but most of it, the lion's share of it, has been caught, not taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. I mean, you know, every single podcast guest that I've had on, they always talk about leading through example. You know, I haven't heard caught, not taught.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right?
That's and that definitely hits home. Yeah, since you mentioned Diana, I want to share some statistics with you.
Sure.
I think everybody knows that divorce rate is 50%, maybe a little greater now.
Yeah.
Thank you, COVID, right?
Right.
But what a lot of people don't know is that the 50% that stay together, they're actually divided up into 3 equal camps of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So 1/3 of the couples that stay together can actually identify their relationship as like, it's everything I ever wanted. It's great. It's awesome, right? We work together, wouldn't change much. Mm-hmm. Then there's the middle ground. The next 1/3 is like, it's all right.
Yeah.
You know, we're kind of settling. Like, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, that's too much trouble to break up. Like,
right.
I love him. I love her. It kind of works. There's some connection, but intimacy is far and few between. And then the final 1/3 is they want nothing to do with each other. They live under the same roof as strangers. They have little to no connection whatsoever. And the two main reasons that they stay together is we got to stay together for the kids, or it's too financially devastating to break up. So it's really understanding like, hey, what are the things that couples need to do that where we can operate in camp one, right? And so for you and Diane, I mean, you guys seem like you work very, very well together. And as far as just how you guys operate within marriage, what are some things that have been just highly valuable and very useful?
Yeah, and truth be told, in the beginning, while we worked together, there was a lot of conflict.
Sure.
Because when you work together but don't have boundaries, right? Imagine if you and I are business partners. Like, hey, Larry, you want to start this business? Yes, I do. Great. Larry and Bedros are now Bedros business partners. We're business partners, but no, we don't really set expectations. So there's no operating agreement that says this is what Larry's going to do, this is what Bedros is going to do, and they're going to do it to meet the same deadline and timeline and create the same outcome. And so being new, young entrepreneurs, we were just like both trying to lead everything in every way that we can. And so there was a lot of conflict. And then at night, we would talk about the business. And over the years, we realized that, hey, there's a few things we need to do to make this work. We need to stay in our lane. So we need to define our lanes. Well, I'm a pretty decent visionary. Like, I can see a vision, and as my wife says, I'm a force to be reckoned with. And so just be clear on the vision. Tell our team, like earlier, right before you came, I was like, hey, Ed, and this guy and that guy, and there's a group of people that I pulled up into there because of the whole MMA awards that we're doing, and we have 9 days to turn around all this content for it to be on ESPN and ABC and CBS. And so like the way I was pitching the group, like I could tell they're like, holy crap, we're about to do something big in 9 days, and but it's like 60 days worth of work in 9 days. I know my role. And in that relationship, she also has discovered her role, and I've seen it too. She's operationally really sound, and she can, so as she says, she goes, you go and you just like create this wake of destruction, and I come around and I organize and create systems and processes so the destruction is less, but you can still work at the speed that you want to work. And that makes me happy. And then when we come home, I realized many, many years ago that we were talking about, I think it was the beginning of Fit Body Bootcamp, so it had to be around 2009, 2010. We're talking about Fit Body Bootcamp, and I wanted to market the franchise one way. She wanted to, thought that it was ridiculous for me to pull money on the house to spend that money on marketing it the way I wanted to market. And before you know it, we're in the hot tub, relaxing, but arguing with each other. So we weren't relaxing and arguing. Next morning, I was like, hey, do you think once we come home, we have a rule that we don't talk about our business, we talk about our kids, we talk about our date night, we talk about anything else but business. Email me your thoughts if you have a moment of like great idea or bad idea. Email it and I'll do the same to you. So we started creating rules. I just love rules. Like I told Andrew, if the bagel and the cream cheese are around, I'm going to eat it, man, right? If it's not, I'm not. Yeah. That's just how I roll. Like carbs and we go well together. And so like I know what works for me. And so we created these rules, but I learned long ago that create your own lane and define what her lane is and my lane is, number one. Number two, create rules that we're not going to talk about work around the dinner table, on the couch, when we're watching our one episode with the kids of whatever it is that we're watching currently. We're watching Breaking Bad now that they're old enough. We're not going to talk about it in the hot tub. We're not going to talk about work on date night because then it's just more of the same meetings, but just at a nice restaurant, right? And what I've also learned is that in terms of working together this way, and this is more me than her, I need to be better in communicating what my next move is, because sometimes I'll make a move and she'll hear through it through Joan or another team member. And at the end of the day, she's our CFO, Chief Financial Officer.
Right.
And so if she's like, holy crap, I wasn't told about this, it's not just my CFO. Like I can surprise Joan, and this has happened plenty of times where she sees me marketing something on Instagram. She goes, holy crap, we don't even have a website for that. I'm like, don't worry about it. I'm just saying DM me and we'll sell them to whatever it is we're going to sell them. She's like, now she's creating a system, autoresponders, setting up to whoever, with the video guys, making the website with the video team, web team. But I could do that to Joan, and no offense, Joan, but we're not going home together.
Right.
do that to my wife,
Yeah.
we're going home together. And now she's a wife, and she's like, hey, man, you disrespected me, right? And truthfully, that's what it is. And as I realize, I'm doing that to Joan, so I try and do less of that with Joan as well. But all this to say that I'm no longer so spontaneous in launching a business or a marketing scheme. I just take an extra hour or day to talk to her about it. And what I've realized is it creates this calm in her that she has her finger on the pulse of what her crazy husband is about to do. And she's not trying to stop the crazy. She just wants to know where the crazy is headed so she could do her part with it. And I have so much respect for that. But that was the last piece of thing that we had to work through for us to not be so confrontational. Because then I would interpret it as, why do you always have to C-block me every time that I'm trying to do something big and exciting? I'm really good with creating businesses. So I have a lot of businesses, a lot of companies, and they do well. But at the same time, she wasn't trying to just C-block me. She was trying to figure out, like, where do we get the money from for that? And I'm just like, take it from the other company. She's like, you can't just take money from an international franchise that gets audited by the Federal Trade Commission to start a new business. Like, you have to have a reason why. It's like, oh, I didn't know that, right? Like, if it wasn't for her, I'd probably be in jail because I paid my taxes incorrectly. And so she's stressing about that part, but then she comes home with this knucklehead and she realizes that, like, man, this dude really, like, stressed me out. And so I really needed to learn that piece. But now that we have our lanes, we have our rules, and then I take this extra step of pausing and letting her know, like, this is my move. What do you think? You're crazy. I think it'll work because you make it work. What do I need to do? I need you to do this. And then off she goes and off I go and it works. And she's got a really good way of saying it. She goes, we're both jagged rocks. This is all how marriage is. Two jagged rocks. They all come with their own problems and traumas and situations and filters that they see life through. And they go and get married and you're put in a burlap bag. And the idea is life and time shake that burlap bag around. Now, if you don't have the discipline and the ability to show grace and compassion and forgiveness, one of the rocks is going to jump out, divorce. But if you stay in that bag long enough, my wife is so good with metaphors. You stay in that bag long enough, soon you can reach in and pull out two really smooth pieces of rocks that just fit together perfectly. And that's what we've become after 21 years. All to her credit, not mine. I'm going to be very honest with you on that. And so I use that at the project, that visual analogy, because when she said it to me, I'm like, oh my God, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I really thought before she was just trying to stop my creativity. And so I'd go fists up, when in reality, she was just like, I'm trying to make sure, like, our nest is still protected. And as Kevin, my therapist, told me, all Mama Bird wants is like, hey, is the nest safe from predators and do we have food to feed my young? If so, yes, then all she really expects is of Papa Bird to stand on the ledge of the nest with its arms spread, like, hey, I've got you. I'm protecting you from the wind and the rain. Now, Papa Bird says, I'm going to build a bigger 5-story nest up there on that branch for you, and it's going to be amazing, right?
Yeah,
That's what we want to do as men, because we're visionaries. We want to go and conquer a new adventure. And she's just like, this nest is fine, dude. Like, now you're giving me insecurity, you're giving me doubt, you're giving me fear. What I mean, you're going to leverage this nest to build that nest, and we're going to get 5 nests out of this one, only if you could do it right. If you can't, then we have to go live in my mom and dad's nest, right? No wife wants to hear that. So by actually communicating, which was the last piece of the puzzle that I learned, man, it's just such a joy to be in that burlap bag with the right person. Yeah.
I feel like I'm learning all kinds of new lingo. You got the caught but not, the caught not taught. I love the metaphor of the 2 rocks in the bag.
Right.
You hit upon something there too, the theme of, a woman's 3 basic needs: to feel seen, heard, and the most important one that you hit on was safe, right? Safe. Like, hey, I'm on board with this, but just make sure that we're safe, right? And so I love that, man. I'm very, very curious about your Squire program, which, by the way, I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. I love the fact. So Ryan Mickler is a good friend of mine.
Okay. I figured you guys would probably be friends.
Yeah, we're the funny thing was we actually met by accident. So he and I started our podcast the exact same week.
Yeah.
And we met in a Facebook group to rate and review podcasts. And I met Ryan in 2015, and I listened to his podcast. So I was supposed to review it. He listened to mine, and I was like, oh my God, this guy's background is exactly like mine. It's crazy. So I reached out to him like when we were like infants in this stage. Yeah. And I know he did the Squire program. and raved about it. And I've already taken my boys. So here I am, right? I've never gone through a rite of passage growing up. I shared with you my story and how crazy that was. I did take my 2 older boys on probably the best rite of passage that I could think of. Yeah. So, and I love the theme of like, let's go through a little bit of pain together. Let's share some pain. Let's do something big and challenging. So I took each one of them on a hike up a 14er. Wow. In Colorado, 12-hour round trip. I took my 13-year-old, I took him when he was 11. I was actually shocked he made it. We hiked up Mount Quandary. And then I told him, I said, listen, this hike is symbolic. Okay, it's a rite of passage. This mountain represents the end of you being a boy. And when we get to the top of that mountain, it's the beginning stages of you being a young man. And we're not just going to hike up this mountain and get to the summit. What we're going to do is we're going to take our time. We started at 4 a.m. We had the headlamps, couldn't see anything. And I told him, I was like, we are going to stop about every hour. And I'm going to read you something. I had a letter that I created for him that had 14 different pillars of going from boy to man, and I read them one at each trip. I said, the other thing we're going to do too is in life, you're always going to be looking at the thing, the summit, right? And a lot of times we don't take time to just be joyful and appreciative of like, well, where did we come from? What does the view look like from up here versus when we started? So each elevation we went to, we took a look around, and then you get past tree line, air's getting thin. And then when I was like, see how far we've come? Look where we started. View looks different from up here. And then there were several different pillars, it's like how you treat women, money management, honesty, integrity, character, core values, those things. And then we got to the top of the mountain, I read him another letter, and he just freaking crumbled. But here's something that's really cool, just a really quick story. So I've done 14ers before, consider myself a decently fit person, and we were going up the mountain. He's 11. I was getting a little worried because he was getting tired. I was like, hey, man, give me your backpack. And he's like, no. He's very stubborn, very competitive. I'm like, give me your backpack. I know you're getting tired. We've been hiking for 7 hours. He's like, I'm not giving you my backpack. And so we went up a little bit more. This one might make me emotional, but that's all right. Went up a little bit more. He was starting to stagger. I was like, as your father, take off that backpack. I had one on. I had a Camelback and a back. He's like, well, what are you going to do? You have a backpack. I was like, I'll just wear it. Don't worry. So I wore it, get to the top. We start coming down. Suddenly I feel my legs, my quads starting to cramp. Like I was like, oh shit. Because we're like 5 hours, Yeah. So like 7 hours up, 5 hours down. And I was like, oh my God, my legs. And it was one of those cramps in both legs. I was just like, this is not good. So I stopped and I was like, man, my legs, I stretched out. And then we went a little bit farther, stopped again. One thing I'll back up here real quick. When I took his backpack off, I'm like, listen, man, every man needs help from time to time, okay? I'm helping you. Just let go of the ego, let go of the pride, I'll help you, okay? I was like, and I put my arm around him and I'm like, don't worry. I was like, who knows? Maybe you'll need to help me on this trip. And I kind of laughed, right? Well, here I'm coming down. So long story short, finally the third time my legs completely cramp up. I get down on the ground. I'm stretching them out. I'm in so much pain. People are coming up. I'm trading Gatorade and beef jerky, trying to get sodium and potassium and bananas. Finally, after like 30 minutes, the cramps go away. And I'm like, I'm looking for my pack. I'm like, where the hell's my backpack? He's got it on.
Oh, what a guy.
Along with his. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm carrying your pack. And I'm like, no, you're not. I was like, dude, you're 11 years old. You're not carrying my pack. That's 35 pounds on your back along with your backpack. He's like, no, I'm doing this. I was like, no, you're not. Give me the backpack. He points me in the chest and he goes, you told me that part of being a man is asking for help when you need it. You helped me. I'm going to help you. And he just started walking and I was like, holy shit. And I thought to myself, I'm his dad. I need to go do that. And I was like, I can't take that away from him. This is a moment for him. So he carried that thing for 2 hours. But, I struggle, honestly, with what does a rite of passage look like for these young boys? Because if you look back, in ancient times and tribal, there was something ceremonial about a boy becoming a man. So I'm curious, how did the Squire program come to be? And is there any detail that you can talk about that maybe isn't under wraps?
Well, so when you really think about the Squire program and the project, it was a byproduct of a single book that my wife's uncle gave to me when Diana was pregnant with Andrew. So in 2004, when Di was pregnant with Andrew, Uncle John, cool story because he built this giant accounting firm. You know, when I met Di, you know, you learn about the family, right? Like, oh, what is your family like? You know, well, my dad's a doctor, and the other dad, he's a CPA for this big company. But my other uncle, he's an entrepreneur. Like, he's what you want to be. I was just starting out as an entrepreneur, creating this little software platform back in 2003, and I'm like, oh, what does he do? It was created this accounting firm, and he just sold it right before we met. Wow, he built and sold a business, for like $25 million back in, early 2001, 2002. I was like, man, that's awesome. And so now he became an independent kind of CPA for people, and I was like, one day I'm going to hire him, and then today he's our CPA, which is really freaking
That's awesome.
sweet. But in 2004, he gave me this book entitled Raising a Modern Day Knight. The name of the author escapes me at the moment. And I read the book, I'm like, this is like, I need to learn a lot of this stuff, right? I need to put myself through rite of passage. And it wasn't much later after that I started putting myself through these 6-week challenges, like just these hard things, like train for a marathon and then do the marathon just to test myself. Like, do I have what it takes? And so as I'm reading this book, I'm like, whew, okay, some kind of a playbook to be able to raise Andrew. One of the things it talked about was as he comes of age, 13, 14 years old, maybe you gather the men in his life that you respect, that share the same core values, could be maybe a business partner, could be friends, could be uncles, whoever, and you put him through this ritual, through this thing where, and it described like, this obstacle course, could be like rusty nails and broken glass, and you blindfold him and you stand 40 yards away and all the uncles and friends make a lot of noise and hoot and holler, and you're like, son, listen to my voice and take 2 steps forward. If you go any more than that, you're going to step on a rusty nail, right? And you kind of blindfoldedly walk him through this obstacle. The idea is that life will give you a lot of noise, and there is one true voice, your radiance, your inner guidance, your gut will tell you where true north is if you just can shut out that noise. And so as the son walks to you blindfolded, etc., and successfully navigates the obstacle course of death, then take off the blindfold and ta-da, and then all the men gather around and speak into the son like, hey, I wish I knew this. If I could, there's one thing I knew at your age, it'd be this. That would help me become a better man. And so I was like, cool, okay, so I'm going to do this with Andrew. So, as a little dude, I was like, hey, buddy, can you reach the truck door? Yes. Okay, open that door for mom. Okay, you open it for mom. Okay, well, I got Chloe here, so go up in the back door for daughter, for Chloe, your sister, because this is what we do as men. We're the last ones in the car, because we look left and right, we protect. Is there any bad guys? No. At airports, when we travel as a family to go see my wife's parents, like, the Di would take Chloe into the restroom to change a diaper, and Andrew would just stand there. I'm like, hey, buddy, stand with your back against the wall, So you got, okay, you see that? Yeah, hey, she needs help. Want to go help her? Yeah, let's go help her pick that thing up, her luggage. And so we would do all that stuff and open doors, etc., and please and thank yous, and learn to communicate, and we stand up and we shake hands, son. Like, it was so cool because I needed to learn that stuff too. So I learned it while Di was pregnant with him, and then I started teaching him that. And then when he turned 13, man, talk about full circle. This is nuts, Larry. Matt Schneider, who I just told you about, he's one of our instructors for the project, also works for one of my companies. And then he's the guy that has mom had married 8 times. In Boise, Idaho, Matt was a former cop and a former SWAT officer who broke off and started his own business, a kill house. Which is a shoot house, a 40,000 square foot warehouse, and it's got like a whole like restaurant entrance. It's got a 3-bedroom, 2-story house, but no roof, so you could stand on the catwalk and watch the guys who are going to clear the rooms, because starts teaching FBI agents and CIA guys and military guys, and police departments, like how to clear rooms, because he was a pretty badass SWAT officer. And so I had built a friendship with him, and so I said, hey, he had invited me to go do that once, and I said, hey, Matt, my son's 13 years old. Could I bring 9 guys up here along with my son and put him through this like scary, tough thing where we're shooting pellet guns, not real guns, because they do have ballistic walls. They're so fun, man. But anyway, so we go there, and he's put us through this whole scary, high-stress situation, and I explained to Andrew, like, hey, Bryce is coming, and this guy and that guy. And during the breaks and lunches, we'd talk about lessons of life and of manhood, and son, this is your rite of passage into manhood. And at the end of the day, I've asked Matt to put you through a very stressful situation, and this time around, he had one of his instructors with a fully automatic pellet gun, airsoft gun, in one of the bedrooms of the house, and Andrew was to go and clear the house, based on how we learned, with a pistol, and rescue the teddy bear. So somewhere in the house is a teddy bear that's being held hostage by a bad guy, and for the first time ever now, you're going to get shot at with a pellet gun. And so, whatever, he did it, he got shot at, he returned fire, he rescued Teddy, and off he went. And so we gathered around, and I turned on my iPhone, and all the guys knew what we were going to do, and Andrew and I stood in the middle, and I said, hey, son, these are all guys that I respect and I trust, and as we're facing in and arms linked, if I'm never around, like, they've got your back, and I want you to build friends like this, like I have, who will call you out when you're not living to your core values, to your character, will pour into you when you need it. And I said, now, guys, please turn around the other way, arms linked. I said, son, you might think they have their backs to us. They don't. In times of weakness, and you are going to have moments of weakness in life, they're going to have your back. So they're going to be looking out for you. God, I'm getting emotional about this. They're going to have your back like these guys have my back. When plenty of times I haven't been able to kind of stand on my own 2 feet, son. And you know this guy, and you know that guy, and you know this guy. And in fact, one of them now, Bryce, is the CEO of my franchise, Fit Body Boot Camp, man. It's crazy. And so my iPhone was recording and had the guys turn back around, and I've got my hand on Andrew's shoulder, and we're in the middle of the circle, and Ed was there filming the whole thing, and I gave my iPhone to each guy. So there's a Green Beret, there's a SWAT guy, Matt, and a couple of business friends and a couple of dear friends I grew up with who I just love dearly, and just solid men and husbands and fathers. And each of them are crying. We're all falling apart as we're trying to give Andrew this one piece of advice to record, right? And like, hey, Andrew, if there's one thing that I could have learned at the age of 13 that would have helped me as a man, it's this. And basically 11 minutes and 19 seconds of recording that my son listens to several times a month, he says, still 3 years later now. And that was his experience. And so after that, I kind of talked about it on social media and showed some pictures of it, never really shared the audio. I didn't want to share the audio. That's for him to have. And all these men were like, man, can you organize something like this? I'm like, well, I read this book, Raising a Modern Day Knight. Go read it. You'll learn from it. Then you're going to do it. Off you go. Still, can you organize something like this? Yeah, sure, fine. I'll organize something like this. And so I did, and that's how the Squire program came to be, because knights have squires. It is, again, in our male DNA that all young boys are attracted to their older boys as this rite of passage. And the job of the knight is to teach the squire to sword fight, and the squire's job is to clean the horse and the armor and to sharpen the sword. But in the process, the knight is mentoring him to becoming a man. And so, as you said, many different cultures. For example, in New Guinea, they have this thing where as the sun falls and it gets dark, they steal the boy, 12, 13-year-old boy, from mom. Dad's part of that group. They bring him to the edge of the forest, and they would cut his arm with a knife, hand him the knife, and then send him into the forest and say, fend for yourself throughout the night. You're bleeding, obviously, so now you're going to be predators are going to be attracted to you. Fend for yourself, and don't come out of the forest until the sun comes up. And, of course, the idea is that as soon as he comes out of the forest, when the sun comes up, hey, you have now won a right at the table with the men, so that we will now forge you into a man of this tribe. Many different cultures have many different rituals. And so I created this 15-hour ritual where sons and fathers suffer together and go through this list of 34 things that every boy should know to become a man, whether it's driving a manual car or how to shake hands and make eye contact when you stand up, etc. And what's really neat about it is at the very end of the 15th hour, we create this obstacle course where there's bear traps and razor wire that looks like tumbleweed made of razor wire, 2x4s with rusty nails sticking out of it, and then a couple of our big beefy project instructors with pugil sticks standing on the edge of our trucks, just swinging this thing. And of course the boys see it, and it's about a 30-yard runway, and they're blindfolded, and there's like this music happening, really loud, angry, whatever, metal music. And the idea is Dad's going to guide you through those obstacles, bear traps, razor wire, etc. And your job is to make it to the other end. And the dads, we don't even need to tell them, the dads just know. As soon as they tear off their eye mask, their blindfold, it's just this most meaningful hug. And you could see the dads that were kind of awkward with their kids, didn't know whether I should put my arm around my son or not in hour number 1 or 2, are just like, they're just tangled up together at the end of this because they did obstacle courses together, they did evolutions together that they would not have successfully accomplished on their own. They could have only done it together and then as a boat crew, because we also put groups of them together. And so it's such a neat experience to see dads who were somewhat distant bond in that time, and then at the end, like I walk my son through an obstacle, like he trusts my voice, and the son knows that now I have a seat at the table, and of course I give the speech at the end, and then of course we have this big barbecue. And it's such a meaningful thing, and we've had 4 classes now. And this in 2022, we're having one here in Southern California, one at Ryan Mickler's place, in Maine, and then one in Austin. And many of my friends have reached out to me like, hey, you can do one here in St. Louis, you can do one here in Utah. Like, all right, well, I also have businesses to run, but I'm going to get to it because if there's a need for it, then by golly, I'm going to do it. But that's how the Squire program came to be, man. It's something that I needed to learn, and then something that I wanted to instill in my son, and something that I just shared on a platform of social media, and other dads were like, I need this.
Yep.
And this last class, something compelled me, and I said, if you're a mom and you don't have like a brother who could serve like as an uncle, bring that your son, you're divorced, you have a dad that can bring, you don't have any male figure to bring him, just reach out to me and let me know. And so now a lot of my friends who, I mentor and coach a lot of military guys pro bono who come out of the special operations forces, like Rangers and Green Berets and Marine Raiders and a bunch of Navy SEALs. You tell them one Navy SEAL works with you, they all work with you. And so I mentor them, and I was like, hey, now I've mentored you guys into entrepreneurs, now I've got a favor to ask you. I've got these many moms that have no dad figure. Can you guys step in? They were like, just tell us what class and when.
Yep.
And so now these guys are stepping in as like surrogate dads and uncles, and so now they're staying in contact with the boys who otherwise, dude, it's just such a cool thing. It's evolving on its own, and I'm like, okay, this is clearly my calling, and not like all this other stuff I did was for me to have enough money to be able to launch the Squire program and the project. And it's here I thought my calling was fitness. Fitness saved my life, and fitness is certainly good, and I love it. But my calling is to serve men, and hopefully this next generation of young men. And if I do my job right, we will work out of ourselves, out of a job for the project. The project should not exist in the future if we do our job right with the Squire program. And so that's just this freaking awesome feeling that I have in my gut, that I know that I'm right about that. But that's how the Squire program came to be. Yeah.
You're doing damn good work, man.
Thank you.
I mean, and I got to tell you, when you talked about that program, like you came to freaking life, man. Yeah. You can tell like this is something that, well, I think men like you and I, we crave something like that. Yeah. Like when you picked up that book, it was like, so this is what it is, right? Bingo. Yeah. So this Bingo. Is what it is. And now to create it, because I got to, like I said, I sort of did my own, 14er version, but there's still that part of me that's like, no, I want to go through a guided crucible with my boys,
Yeah.
you know, with another group of people where we can have some pain together. I'm really big on like, let's go experience something that we'll be on our deathbed and remember.
Bingo.
You know, not the, but so I love that, man. I have one more question for you as we wrap up. And I love asking this one last question because I've seen some guests. Even Matthew McConaughey got a little emotional when I asked him this, but I love this question because you're 47.
Correct.
Okay. Andrew's 16.
Yeah.
Chloe is 13.
Yes.
Okay. And Diane is
40.
40. Okay. So I want to put you in a situation. Okay. In a future situation.
Sure.
And I want you to think about your life 20 years from today. So you're 67.
Okay.
Diane's 60. Andrew is 36 years old. And Chloe is 33. And you're having dinner. And it's your favorite meal. You're in your dining room. It could be the dining room that you guys have now, or it could be a different room. But you're just looking at everybody's face, and perhaps Andrew has been married and he's got a family, and maybe Chloe the same. But you look at Diane, you grab her by the hand, and you just ask, what's been the most meaningful memories and connections that we've made over the past 20 years? She smiles, lights up, and she tells you what those things are. And then, after she tells you that, you look at Andrew and you look at Chloe, and you ask the same question. What are the most meaningful memories and connections that we have made over the past 20 years? What would they be telling you?
The experiences. 1,000% the experiences. We have been very fortunate, very blessed to have awesome experiences. Some of them absolutely stupid and goofy, like during the 2020 year. Look, when you're the CEO of a franchise, a fitness franchise, 2020 was not kind to us.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Right? We were losing, we lost 218 franchise locations in 10 months, man. Like and so, you know, I got all my Navy SEAL friends who I'm coaching in business, they're reaching out to me like, build a go bag. I'm like, what the fuck is a go bag? Build a go bag. Here's what a go bag is, and get chickens. I'm like, why do I need chickens, man? Like, 'cause supply chains, right? And all this stuff. And so, holy shit, I'm building go bags. And before you know, we're hiking our normal hikes, but we're hiking with go bags on and creating this plan of where we'd go if, you know, the cities get compromised, etc. And it was such a cool experience, man. That was a cool experience, just like the year before, 2019, when we went to Greece and then Mykonos and then the other island, and then we rented this like beautiful catamaran where we had our own captain and chef, and then we watched the sun set with this amazing dinner on the Mediterranean Ocean. But we've had so many fun experiences. Just the other day we talked about another experience where we were so hell-bent on going to the Disney's Wild Animal Kingdom from California to Florida. Chloe had like this ear infection. She was the queen of ear infections, bro. And so she was like 9 years old. We're like, Chloe, doctor says ear infection. If we fly, you're going to get a perforated eardrum, which means your eardrum's going to tear. Like, we're willing to take the risk if you are. We're taking the risk, Mom and Dad, we're doing it. And so we just get on the plane because we're savages, you know. We land and we're like high-fiving each other in the airport. Like, how's your eardrum, girl? I'm good. It hurts so bad, but I'm good, you know. And so then we get to our hotel in the drafts, eating the thing right there by you. But it's just the experiences from the Corona hikes. In fact, my wife created the Corona salad. For some reason, there was this one salad week every damn night during the entire 10, 11, 12 months of the 2020 of Corona. So we named it the Corona salad. But we would take the go bags, and there was 3 go bags between the 4 of us, so that one go bag, one person's always kind of resting, and we'd rotate the bags, and this one's got the guns and the patch you up things, and that one's got the dry goods and the food, and that one's got the water filtration, and that one's got the fire and the shelter. And man, it was just the experiences. Like I know for a fact, Di would be listing off her experiences. Andrew would be listing off his experiences that we've had. I'd be listing off mine, and the experiences. I can't say that it was this one car that we had or this one hotel that we stayed at. It's the goofy experiences from, I'm thinking of them now, like Scotland and Ireland, where we're trying to surf in like ice cold water with like wind so strong we could have been blown to the next country. And we're just looking at each other like, what the hell are we doing? Just to say we've surfed in Ireland? We're going to die right now. Let's get the hell out. Experiences. Yeah.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
We have a quote in our family. It's experiences over stuff.
Yeah.
We love that. And I love that story with how you made the best of 2020.
Yeah.
You know, as we wrap up here, since you talked about 2020, I wanted to share this just because it really hits home the experiences and the memories. And I love that that's so important to you, because in no part of that message was there like, oh, we have just a shit ton of stuff. But in 2020, I think it was right around May, you know, our family, we were locked down, we're in St. Louis, and everybody's feeling sorry for themselves. And, you know Mark Devine, right?
Yeah.
So Mark's been on the show a few times, and there's one thing that he said that really hits home for me, and it's quality of our life depends on the quality of our questions that we ask ourselves and those around us. So my wife and I were like, why is this happening? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And finally we just looked at each other, we're like, we're asking ourselves really shitty questions. It's like, how might we connect as a family in a way that we never have, being that we're facing things we've never faced? And we came up with, let's go somewhere every single week. And the rule is this, 2 rules. Go somewhere you've never been, do something you've never done. And we did that. We went hiking, we went caving, we went floating, we went cliff jumping, we did all these things. We even actually went to Disney. That was one of the things we did do, because none of us have been to Disney except for my wife. And my wife, I came home literally just a couple weeks ago, and I never asked for gifts, ever. I'm not a gift person. And for Father's Day, my wife's like, what do you want for Father's Day? And my answer is always the same, nothing. And this past Father's Day, I was like, I want a mural of all the photos that we took, like our top photos. And at the top, I wanted to say something like, while the rest of the world was caving, we came together. Or while the rest of the world was in panic, we connected. And that gift didn't come. And I was like, okay, no, not a big deal, right?
Well, what the hell?
So I leave town last week to do another interview, and I brought one of my boys with me, and I come home and go downstairs, and there's 80 pictures on the wall, and right in the middle it says, never say that you can't go on an adventure and connect. And it had 80 pictures of the top moments that we had in 2020.
Wow.
And I looked at that wall, and dude, I freaking teared up, and I was like, hell yeah. I was like, while the rest of the world was thinking everything was going to come to an end, like, this is proof that we all freaking came together. And I love the fact that that is what you are just hell-bent on, is coming together. I'm going to get emotional hearing your story, man, because, like, hell-bent on coming together through experiences and by connection. That's what it's all about, man.
It is. It really is, man. At the end of the day, like, I can't remember, like, any specific tchotchke or possession that we could all connect over as a family, right? Yeah. Like maybe our dog, but we see her as a family member, so even that doesn't qualify. But experiences, whether it's like, whatever, Andrew, like, if he hears this, that kid will, like, as a kid, he had blowouts. I don't know why. He would just, like, poop right through his diaper, right up his back, you know. And till this day, it's a running joke now. He's like, oh, guys, I just farted. I don't know if I sharted or farted. And it's like, son, like, we're, like, at some, wherever we might be, right? It's some experience somewhere, and there's no toilet nearby, and he just, like, ends up sharding himself. And I love how confident he is. Yeah. Like, he's just, right? But I share that because, like, those are the things I could just laugh over for hours. But I can't remember, like, any one tchotchke or thing or car or whatever that I could be like, oh, that one possession that we could all connect over.
Right.
And so that's proof that, you know, what you're saying there with experiences, man, it's a very powerful thing. It brings people together, and then you go back to the memories. And you know this, now that your kids are older, I'll be like, hey, Andrew, when you were small, this is what happened when we went to that air show. Here at the Chino Airport, they bring in all these airplanes, including the F-22 Raptor. And I go, hey, here's what happened when that F-22 Raptor, like, came by in silence, and we were looking, and then, like, literally, like, 3 seconds later, like, the crash of the, right? The sound, whatever, sound wave or whatever? Yeah. And, like, my experience of what happened was very different. He's like, oh, Dad, here's how I saw that happening, you know? And it's just so neat. Again, an experience, because I can't remember a thing that we ever bonded over, a product or thing. It's just always been experiences. Yeah.
I love that, man. I want to make sure we give you time. We want to hear where guys can find the Squire program, and I know you have your Modern Day Nights program for the men as well, and then of course where men can connect with you on your Instagram and website and everything.
Yeah, I think the best place where if men want to hear more of my goofy rants and philosophies and whatever, just follow me on Instagram at Bedros Koulian. I think that's the best place to start, and from there, whatever they want to learn about, they can click on the link in my bio, and it would take them there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
That was awesome.
Yes,
man.
sir.